Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bret Leuder Show. This is episode 73. I'm calling it The Lost Souls of Montauk in relation to a recent documentary produced by Michael Roser in February of this year, 2024, about second generation survivors of the Montauk Project and the secret space program, and a whole series of intriguing aspects to our government, the world around us, the true situation of the world around us. And I have one of the subjects of that documentary. His name is Alandra Markman, and he is with us today to tell us about his experience and about the ramifications of the Montauk Project, the secret space program, and contact with aliens for the rest of us around the world. Alandra, thank you for your time. Welcome.
Hi, Brett. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate your time.
Mm,
So, Alandra, I've read all the Montauk books. We had a little pre-talk, so I've read the first four Montauk books with Peter Moon and Preston Nichols. But I've gone off. I've read almost all of Peter Moon's books. I've read the Swordlow books. I even read Philadelphia Experiment Murder by Alexandra Bruce,
mm,
which I thought was a great book. She did a really great job with that.
mm.
Um, and so I'm well versed in this whole Montauk thing. So it supposedly started in 61. It supposedly ended in 1983. I'm guessing you're one of those that say it didn't really end. And tell us, because you're a younger gentleman in your mid 30s, I'm guessing, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so you would be super young if you were in the Montauk Project back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Give us just put it into perspective for us, because I know time travel's involved. Um, just some crazy stuff. Tell us when you first became aware of being in Montauk and your time at Montauk.
Sure. Um, yeah, it's quite trippy. So, um, it starts in a body, not this body. Um, and the experiences I had at Montauk were primarily in the mid 70s up until the early 80s. Um, and this body, according to my birth certificate, was born in 86. So this body um, was not necessarily there. Although there's a lot of overlap, there are certain timelines where the project continued at that location through the present, up through around 2014 at least. And I have simultaneous memory of a bunch of different timelines, including ones where that is true. So then I also have experiences in this body at the Montauk site. Um, This project is also worldwide. It's at a bunch of different locations. And when the main place closed down in 83, which has been well documented, a lot of it moved to Western Europe, specifically Switzerland. And in the US, different branches of it are present all over the country. Um, so it's quite a widespread thing. Um, yeah, but primarily, when I talk about it, I usually start in the 70s because those were my first experiences. But again, they were in a different body. Um, this is not normal death and rebirth. It's not like a past life. It's actual consciousness transfer using technology from one body to another. And so I have continuous memory. I don't have, the usual gaps that you have between lifetimes. Um, I'm also happy to talk about, organic, natural past lives. Um, but yeah, whatever direction you want to go in, I'm available.
Okay. Mind control is such a deep, multi-layered subject, and and literally when you start studying memory, it's it's not only a wondrous thing that a human has, but it's also very easily manipulated.
Hmm.
Memory is tricky for the person, right? Memories can be fleeting or they could be perfectly vivid. Um, so it's fascinating to me that given what you most likely have been through, that you could remember anything clearly at all.
It's a miracle. This is for sure. Yeah.
So, I struggle with memories from maybe my childhood, and but then there's other memories from childhood that are crystal clear. Like I remember riding my tricycle into the pool in the backyard one time, and my parents getting all freaked out
Yeah.
having to rescue me, right? Then there's
Yeah.
most of those memories from back at that time I don't really remember. What when did you first get into the program to the best of your recollection?
Yeah. Well, to go in linear order, which is usually convenient for narrative purposes, um, my earlier body was born 1970, and I was brought to Montauk around 4 years old, maybe still three, so 1973, 74 was when I first arrived. Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember it pretty well. There were Air Force officers that came to my home. I lived with a single parent, and my mother was told that it was basically an educational program that I was going into. So she signed off on this thing with very little knowledge of what was actually happening. Um, yeah, but she did know that she wouldn't see me again, at least for a very long time. Um, so I remember that process, and of course the memories before the hardcore torture started are much more clear. And then after that, it gets much more fuzzy, because there's a lot of stuff that's still blocked out because it's so painful. Yeah.
Okay, so this reminds me of the X-Files, where a good part of the show was Fox Mulder looking for his sister,
Mm.
which his dad gave up to the program.
Hmm.
This sounds similar. Although your mom may not have known exactly what the program was, she signed off on it, huh? That's a
Yeah, this is true. Um, Well, as you might guess, she wasn't entirely present, emotionally, mentally. Uh, she was under a lot of stress and felt like she couldn't support a child. So, there was a lot of pressure on her. Um, yeah, but yeah, these things happen. And it's very different from the experience that I had in this body because this time around as Alandra, so that previous person was called Max. As Alandra, I was born into a satanic Luciferian family, and so I went through ritual abuse from a very young age, including my earliest memories. Um, but before I went to Montauk, I came from, not ideal home, but certainly not that level of trauma. Yeah.
I know some single moms. I grew up. I was with my mom. She was a single mom for the first several years of my life. It's not easy, and
No.
My heart goes out to all the single moms out there, including my own mom. It's tough. It
Hmm.
really is tough. In other parts of the world, literally, it's part of the culture to sell the children off for a big fee, and
Yeah.
you don't ask any questions. They just go, and as you may well know, a lot of those children wind up in sex trafficking or some type of slavery or all the above. It's a pretty
Sadly.
tragic thing. Have you
Yeah.
ever met your original mother?
I have not. I really would like to. I'm not sure if she's still around. I I went to the address that I remembered, and I found the house. I mean, it was very validating for me to find this physically,
Sure.
Um, I was born in Patchogue, Long Island, um, and I went to Patchogue, and from memory, I was able to drive to the house. I found it, and I spoke briefly with one of the people living there, but it's a different family now, and they didn't have knowledge of what I was talking about. And when I identified myself as a reincarnation, they just totally, shut the door on me, as most people would. Um, so I haven't been able to get that particular meeting to happen, but I'm very open. I mean, who knows? Maybe she'll see this.
Well, one can only hope, right?
Yeah.
Because a part and what I really liked about Lost Souls of Montauk, the documentary of which you're a part, is that it was focused on the healing.
Hmm.
And we're really not going to know, I mean, unless secret government agencies are going to come forth with a bunch of documentation, or ETs are going to come down and say we were part of this program, this is how it was. Really, the best source we have for the quickest information is for the actual survivors to heal and remember.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the healing is the most important part. I mean, it's the reason I I do interviews at all. It's the reason that I I want to be connecting to people because the healing opportunities are infinite, and not even just for Montauk survivors, but for the whole culture, for the entire community, for all human beings, you know.
Okay, so there's so many ways I can go with this, but since you've just brought it up, what are the ramifications of the Montauk Project for America or for the world? It seems
Yeah.
to split into all kinds of directions. Can you give us a brief description of that?
Yeah. Well, there are several, probably more than several lessons intermingled, but some of the most basic are we live in a multidimensional universe. This plane of experience is one of many, many such planes. There are human beings like you and I having many different experiences across many of these levels in dimensions above and below this one. We also live in kind of a tapestry of time, a very complex web, beautiful web of time, of infinite possibilities. And you know, some people who are into sci-fi or just you know, into psychedelic experiences can talk about this casually at great length. But that's definitely one of the lessons for the broader culture, that time is really not a fixed thing. It's made up of many, many interweaving strands. And we have tremendous control over our destiny. So these are sort of overarching lessons, I guess. Um, Also, obviously, we are not alone in the universe as people. There are plenty of people in even in our solar system, many other beings. Our solar system is very highly populated on different dimensional levels. Just because a planet is not inhabitable on the third dimension doesn't mean there's not life there. There could be all kinds of life across all kinds of levels. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have personal experience of these things, and they seem rather important for people to know about and you know to start to open up to and include in their experience. You know, not filter it out. Yeah.
Right.
Um, and then there.
Fascinating. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking of things as I'm talking. And then obviously there are the negative parts, like our government, the US government, and pretty much every major world government is controlled by these incredibly negative forces that are primarily satanic and Luciferian in orientation. Unethical doesn't begin to describe it. There is a massive trauma-based mind control program against the entire population, really. I mean, I'm a survivor of a more personal form of it. Um, but I mean, there are energetic, technological, psychic attacks against the entire population ongoingly. I mean, to keep people in a state of fear, to keep people from raising their vibration. Um, you know, a lot of the forces that make up our government, especially at the higher levels, are very oriented towards keeping our vibration down, keeping our awareness low. And this is a really big deal. It really affects our quality of life on a daily basis. So it's really important to bring to consciousness. Yeah.
You know, I get the distinct feeling that it's like sympathetic magic. I first read about sympathetic magic in Sir James George Fraser's 12-volume set, The Golden Bough.
Mm,
If you've ever read that, I would definitely recommend it. Loaded with information, really got me to see exactly what magic was. And
mm,
sympathetic magic is basically like it's like a voodoo doll. You create an image of the self, or it could be of anything, but then you say some prayers, or you consciously focus and make a conscious or psychic tie between the two. And so I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like your healing is the healing of Montauk. Maybe not you, just you, but all the survivors. When they heal, then Montauk itself could heal. What do you think about that?
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. The more survivors get support, the more we do our work and our play and our rest to heal. It definitely helps the community. It helps the planet. Um, the karma at Montauk is extremely dense and it's not personal in nature. Most of it is collective in nature. Something this big doesn't happen from somebody's personal deeds or misdeeds. You know, these are large scale karmic flows that have to do with everyone. Yeah. So all the healing that Montauk survivors can do is really doing a lot for the collective as well. Yeah, that's for sure.
Very super fascinating. So in the documentary, towards the end, you guys gather on a spot of grass at the location,
Mhm.
and is that location, or at least that grass, is that like on a ley line? Is it on a vortex? Why
Oh
that
yeah.
spot? Okay.
It's a very powerful vortex, a convergence of dimensions and timelines. Um, in terms of the physical layout of the base, it's by the barracks. So that's where we'd sleep at night. Um, or some of us anyway. It depends. Sometimes we had much less humane treatment and we'd be kept underground. But sometimes we'd be kept in the barracks that were used for the Air Force personnel prior to our being there. So that spot by the barracks, yeah, it's on a number of ley lines. The primary karma that I tend to think of it as is Atlantean. So the whole eastern seaboard of the U.S. is very, very connected to Atlantis, energetically and physically. Um, there's been a tremendous effort to kind of bring that culture back into being. A lot of our present day culture is recycled Atlantean energy, Atlantean souls reincarnating, Atlantean values sort of being, like those are our cultural values today. Late Atlantis was a big military empire, just like America. And a lot of the same things are playing out right now. So for me, that's very meaningful to tap into. Um, and some of my spiritual work is based around that. Um, but yeah, across the eastern seaboard of the US are these ley lines that connect to different places in the ocean that were formerly land and connects to these grids. Um, even the placement of Atlantis itself was very intentional. That civilization, especially early on, was at a very high level of consciousness, very attuned to the grids of the earth. Um, and the descendants of Atlantis, that's basically us. And many of our big power spots in America and the Western world in general, especially, are very connected to these Atlantean ley lines.
Super fascinating. You know, I'm friends with Stuart Swerdlow, one of the last four whistleblowers of the original Montauk whistleblowers. He says that off the coast of Long Island, I forget exactly how far, is a giant spire.
Hmm.
Goes from the bottom of the ocean, and at certain times when the light's just right, or if you're right over it, you can, and the water's calm, you can actually see it.
Yeah,
Um, and and then also too, the famous occult magician Aleister Crowley supposedly did his Amelantra working. 3 months of this 6 months ritual was at Land's End in Scotland, and that supposedly connects on by ley line over to Montauk Point.
yeah.
We did the other 3 months of the work.
Hmm.
So that there's been stuff going on at that point for a really super long time.
Yeah,
I can't help but think that if you're sleeping in those barracks, or even the army soldiers, that those ley lines near the barracks are affecting you in your sleep. Uh,
yeah.
Maybe that's why they position you right by the ley lines.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of our army bases, past and present, are situated on these very powerful nodes of energy. And
Okay.
this is intentional. Yeah.
I mean,
It's
because
part of, yeah, that's part of the mass mind control. Yeah.
especially if you're a soldier, you can't question orders. You have to be in line with the orders to follow them right away,
Hmm.
especially when they tell you to kill. You can't have a second thought.
Hmm.
The ultimate need for the mind control, from a positive point of view, it's like, okay, well, we need our guys and gals to obey orders so we can defeat the enemy. Rah rah, go team. But then on the converse of that, once you're at that state, you you'll do whatever they tell you to do, whether it's the good or positive or negative. Um, before we get into, there's so many ways to go. Before we get into the satanic ritual stuff, how is it that you learned about Atlantis? Is it through Dreamtime? Is there any documents? Is the military holding secrets? What's that?
Um, all of the above, to be honest.
Okay.
Um, I can't produce any of these documents, unfortunately. Um, but the higher levels of the military are very aware of Atlantis. They have a lot of documentation about it. Um, in the Vatican Library, in the hidden parts of the Vatican Library, are many, many resources that came directly from Atlantis, texts written in the Atlantean language, which linguists call Proto-Indo-European. So mainstream academia acknowledges this language, but we're not officially allowed to like actually research it. We don't have any source texts. And so linguists have sort of reverse engineered it. But yeah, Proto-Indo-European, the language where we get our Western languages, and where languages of the Indian subcontinent come from, that's Atlantean. It's easily verifiable, but this area of knowledge is very suppressed.
Yeah, fascinating. And so many books have been written about Atlantis. It's just crazy that the information that's out there. So I'm in California, where I believe you're in Mount Shasta right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on the West Coast. So our tradition out here is Lemuria,
Yeah.
supposedly in the Pacific.
hmm
Um, I've seen a Rosicrucian book called Lemuria where they depict on a very simple map California as an island, maybe into Oregon or Washington and below into Baja California, all of it being one island. So that it gives the impression that it was the east coast of Lemuria or Mu at one time in the past. Um, there's spots in California where if you're heading, like I'm in Chico, which is in the Central Valley, the northern kind of part of the Central Valley of California. If I head due west and go to the Mendocino Range, there's a place that actually where the vegetation and the rock structures just change immediately. And it just gives me the impression that wow, this could be a spot where that plate ran into the plate that was North America before. So, I really resonate with that. We're the survivors of Atlantis. Have you ever heard of a lady named Nancy Red Star?
No.
Okay, she wrote a trilogy called The Star Ancestors. And in book one, which really affected the way I think about things and our humans' relationship with star culture, star nations, uh, without exception, all the elders that she talks to, and she talks to elders in North America, Central America, South America, in this particular book, in volumes 2 and 3, she goes around the world. But in the first volume, they're all saying that the land bridge theory, where natives migrate over the land bridge and then down, filling up, the Athabascan, excuse me, languages, that's all wrong, and that really North America is the product of survivors from both Atlantis and Lemuria.
Yeah, this is very true. So the main landmass of Lemuria, you probably know, is in the area of Hawaii. So the islands of Hawaii were the mountains of Lemuria. So those are the mountain tops that are still above the water.
And maybe even the rest of the islands in the South Pacific,
Mm.
depending how far it goes. I don't think anyone really knows how far it stretched, but fascinating. Colonel Churchward, are you familiar with Colonel
Oh
Churchward
yeah.
books?
Yeah, I love his books.
Yeah, and the symbolism he brings forth. So when you're talking about, Proto-Indo-European language, I mean he's doing the same thing over here with Lemuria.
Yeah.
That stuff, those symbols, those cultures, the ideas or energies that ran those cultures are replaying themselves out today on Earth.
Yeah,
Um, and so it
that's
doesn't surprise
definitely
me that you would
true.
say that Atlantis was a military culture, and maybe that's why the United States is a military culture. What do you think from a broad perspective? I would guess that there's energies that did not get resolved from Atlantis are trying to work themselves out now. Would
This
you
is
say that's
very
true?
true.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Um,
Go ahead.
well, we have a quite massive struggle between well, good and evil in a very foundational sense. But between the mass of people and the cabal or Illuminati or whatever you want to call them, who are controlling most of the culture. That same thing was happening in Atlantis. The average Atlantean person was just like your average person now. More inclined towards good than bad, right? But the culture as a whole was controlled by a cabal, which really led it in a much more violent direction that most people were not really on board with. Um, but I do want to say that early Atlantis was very, very closely tied to Lemuria. it was really one culture, you know, of
Really?
Lemuria, of like early and middle Lemuria and early Atlantis. You know, there was a very strong cultural exchange, um, similar languages. Um, Atlantis was born out of Lemuria, as I understand it.
Okay. So kind of like America and Western Europe,
Hmm.
just separated by a giant ocean, but the cultures are very similar, maybe a little bit different histories, but we're basically of European descent, and we all like soccer and cheese and whatever, right? Music.
Kind of like that, except these cultures are much longer lived, and so um, the connections are a little deeper because things had millennia to develop, you know. So it's on a whole different time scale. Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting point because, here America is just over 200 years old. And they say, it took Rome only a few hundred years before it collapsed. Here we are, you could say we're also mimicking Rome, and that I think many would argue that the United States is about to collapse too, with overrun borders, out of control inflation. The dollar's going to supposedly going to collapse. It's been predicted to collapse. The elites that you're talking about that maybe are the same spirits reincarnated and doing the same nefarious activities now. Maybe they're planning the collapse of this country. Some would say that's how it's been for the whole time. They were going to build the middle class up and then wipe it out as a step towards this great work of ages. Um, you mentioned satanic ritual abuse. The name Lucifer comes to mind as being maybe the power, whatever that is. If it's a metaphor or actual figure, I'm not sure. But where does that come from? And how does that get resolved, or does it?
Yeah. It's a great question that I think more of us ought to be asking, so I really appreciate it. Um, well, I'm um I'm actually reading through one of Jose Arguel's books, which I think we have that in common. Um,
Yeah.
and he talks about Lucifer as um, essentially a false creator of star systems, you know, someone who wants to usurp the power of organic life, and create life kind of in its own image, and create um, create stars like that are out of sync with the galactic heart. Um, so I think a lot of that is very accurate. Um, I think Lucifer is the name for this energy of movement away from the galactic center, from kind of the organic flow of life, the organic flow of time, um, an attempt to make a false time and a false space, and to have a whole system of life within that false space. Um, so from that standpoint, um, a lot of our modern conversation, our kind of hot topic conversation about AI and hyper reality can be loosely thought of as Luciferian. I mean, transhumanism is basically a Luciferian agenda, to get people out of their bodies, out of their experience, and more sucked in to all this false experience, things that are not really um, grounded in the earth, grounded in organic time, organic being. Um, so that whole process, yeah, I would describe as Luciferian. And I think the animating spirit of that is kind of what I think of as Lucifer.
Okay. It's a fascinating subject. So, I'm a Christian. Of course, I study the Bible. I've studied lots of traditions, but I've found definite power in the name of Jesus in various situations, especially when what's going to hit the fan. It seems like I naturally cried, "Oh, Jesus," or something, and then it doesn't turn out as bad as maybe I thought. But so, what's the metaphor of how you understand this happened? Lucifer supposedly a high being. Is it an ET? Is it an angel? Interdimensional being? And then, the simple version is, well, it was a lust for power. Well, where did that lust come from? How did that derive? If everything was running smoothly, who threw the wrench in the sprocket, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, to ground this a little bit in my Montauk experience, a lot of the direct representatives of the Luciferian agenda were reptilian beings from the Draco constellation. So these are tall, usually 7 or 8 feet, reptilian humanoid beings. And they were very prominent at Montauk. They were directing a lot of what was happening. Um, and they have a religion, which I guess you could sort of call nihilism. They worship the black sun. They worship this kind of negative space. And they have a massive empire that spans across our galaxy and beyond our galaxy. They have an insane militaristic slave culture. And oftentimes, when people experience the devil or Lucifer directly, it's a psychic projection of the Draco. So I just want to acknowledge that specifically because it sort of grounds it, in bodies in a certain place and time. Um, and then, but everything we bring up brings up more questions. Like, how did that originate? Why did that happen?
Right? We could go on forever. So you can
Yeah,
draw the line anywhere, but I
yeah,
still thought I'd ask.
yeah. No, I, I think it's good to be thinking about this, to try to get a little bit of a handle on it. Um, in practical terms, you know, we have the gift of free will, and evil is the abuse of free will, generally speaking. Um, so anything that and it is part of the design of any free will system that you can abuse it, right? It wouldn't be free will if abuse was not possible. So it is part of the overall process of evolution. Um, and at the same time, our task is to discover for ourselves like why that abuse does not serve us, to outgrow it essentially. And that's really our evolutionary path. Um, so I don't know, that's how I understand it.
Beautiful. No, that's beautiful. Um, and there's those that would say that Lucifer or a dark side or a negative side is necessary to propel us towards that end result that you just described, because without it, we would just be in a perfect world and we'd miss out on all these lessons. Um, I don't know if I
Yeah.
totally subscribe to that, but I know I've heard that quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, perfection is not as boring as it's made out to be. Um, there's there's not, yeah, I think boredom is very sacred. Like it's these things didn't arise like on a whim out of boredom. Like, it's much more complex, I feel. Yeah.
I mean, I just imagine, right? If you're a perfect ascended being for millions of years, at some point you're like, you know, I remember this evil stuff. I read about it back in school 10 million years ago, and I kind of forget no one does it. Let's just check it out, right? Because humans are curious. It's a strength, it's a weakness. I don't know. We're getting off into esoteric land right there a little bit. But
Yeah.
okay, we got about 5 minutes left, 4.5 minutes for this segment. Um, so satanic ritual abuse then are a certain type of set of rituals that would tie you to be closer, connect you with this energy. What is the purpose of satanic rituals?
Yeah, a lot of it is for the Draco to dominate humanity, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. A lot of it is towards that end. Um, so basically, satanic ritual abuse and other forms of trauma-based mind control are a systematic, extremely disciplined attempt to entirely remove the experience of free will. Um, to have someone so deeply under control that they not only can't make decisions for themselves, but they don't even have access to their own thoughts. They're not their own person. They're completely just a vessel for the will of another person or thing. Um, so in general terms, that's kind of what it's about. In practical terms, this usually runs in families, and these systems, these models of trauma-based mind control go down through the generations. And entire family systems can totally lose their free will and their free thought and be sucked up in this larger system. So that's something I have experience with, unfortunately. Um, yeah. Then there are other forms that are less personal and more, more directed at everyone. Um,
Okay. All right. Yeah, magic is, like I said earlier, a multi-level, multi-layered set of techniques. You can really go in any direction you want. You can get creative with it, as you see the different stylized cultures of it all around the world.
mhm.
Um, but we got about a minute, minute and a half. How prevalent is satanic ritual abuse or Satanism or that energy in the military?
Extremely prevalent. I would say the vast majority of the military, especially at the higher levels of leadership, are satanic and practice trauma-based mind control.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that really says a lot right there.
Yeah.
These are the people that are supposedly protecting us in wars or wartime. Um, I knew that it was prevalent. I didn't actually expect you to say it like you just did. I'm a little bit blown away by that.
Mm.
So you hear about this whole political thing with Trump and Biden, and supposedly it was the white hats, quote unquote, that placed Trump in power in 2016, and that there's a struggle within the military between the dark and the light. Have you seen that, or is that a bunch of BS?
I think it's mostly BS.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Trump and Biden both come from satanic families, political families with a lot of power and a lot of money, and they're essentially on the same team as far as I can discern.
Incredible. Okay. Yet still, if I had a choice, I would go Trump because things seem to be a lot better in America while he was here. But they call that controlled opposition. Would you say that's what Trump is?
Um, I can't say with a lot of authority, because I'm not really present to the inner workings of things, in the present day. I just have my past experience that I'm going off of. But I think it's strongly likely, yeah, that that's true.
Okay. Okay. Fascinating conversation, Alandra. We're out of time for this segment, but you're going to join us for another segment, yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, another segment with Alandra Markman. Absolutely fascinating conversation. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the Bret Leuder Show. This is episode 74 and part two of this just riveting, fascinating, interesting, philosophically deep conversation with the Lost Souls of Montauk participant. And it's a new documentary from February of 2024, chronicling what's known as the second wave of Montauk Project survivors. A gentleman named Alandra Markman. Alandra, thank you again for your time and welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, man, this I'm just so fascinated by what you have to say. So to start off this segment, tell us about the consciousness transfer technology. When did humanity gain that knowledge? From where did they get it? And how has that affected the way you view things today in this body?
Sure. Um, well, we've had it at least since the 40s, possibly earlier.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, we've had a whole parallel track of technology evolution, um, sometimes seemingly unrelated to what the public is using and what the public is familiar with. Um, these secret space programs, so-called, um, are not necessarily something new. These are very, very ancient things, actually. And we've been in and out of awareness of them, depending on our level of evolution as a society and what we can kind of tolerate mentally. Um, Thankfully, we're at a place where, we're able to stay with this kind of stuff now. Um, and in terms of the active participation of normal people, in the US military, especially in intelligence communities and related communities, in terms of these types of people having access to um, the technology that's really out there and able to reverse engineer things, that's at least been since the 40s. as far as I'm aware. Um, if it, well, it sounds like you've done some research, with the Philadelphia experiment and all that. The strands at Montauk go back quite a ways, um, and the consciousness transfer process um, was used in those early times. It was used in the 50s and the 60s. Um, they were still experimenting with a few things when I came around, in the 70s. But they pretty much had it down. I mean, they can, as the soul exits the body, they can directly target where it's going. Um, and they've been able to do that with a pretty good degree of accuracy. I mean, everyday human people, not ETs, um, have been able to do this. Yeah, for at least the generation preceding mine. Yeah.
You bring up the imagery of the first Hellboy movie, where the first 10 minutes of Hellboy is the American forces infiltrating one of the North Scottish islands, was not inhabited apparently, and the Nazis took it over and were performing a ritual where they're combining the black magic with the technology and opening a portal. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. It's
I didn't.
one of my favorite movies. That 10
Hmm.
minutes, 10, 12 minutes of the opening part of that movie to me is some of the best in all of Hollywood.
Huh.
Um, but I've studied various traditions, Druid tradition especially, and they have rituals for transferring a soul to another body
Hmm.
and or directing stuff. So I can't help but think that this is all born out of occult knowledge and occult magic.
Yeah, this is true. Um, well, anytime you can do something with a piece of technology, almost always it's possible to do it simply through willpower, through discipline, through psychic skill. Humans are magical in that way. The technology makes things a lot easier to access without any psychic discipline. But almost anything you can imagine, we can do just by harnessing the power of our mind.
Absolutely fascinating. That's got to be one of the most interesting subjects out there.
Hmm.
And then even then, so we might call it magic when we're doing it with our consciousness or doing it in a ritual, but then the scientific method is a protocol, just like a ritual is a protocol, and we're using different tools based on different symbols. Let's say if they use symbols in a ritual, and so really the scientific method really is just a different kind of form of magic, is what it seems like to me.
Hmm.
You're
Yeah. I mean, I really value both. I love the right brain. I love the left brain. Yeah, I think a complete human really engages in both forms of manifestation, the magical and the scientific or prosaic. Yeah.
super interesting. Okay, so tell us about when you got free. When did you first realize that this stuff had happened to you, and how did you feel when you first realized that?
Yeah. Um, well, I mean, I knew something was very wrong as soon as I got to Montauk as a small child. Of course, while I was going through the experiences, part of me stayed conscious and aware of what was happening. So I never fully lost my memory. Some survivors do. Sometimes it gets buried so deeply that it's almost impossible to access. But I was always at least partly conscious. And so I never really was out of step with what was happening. Um, I got free physically. So my consciousness was moved to this body in the early 90s. And so that was, I guess, my previous self's version of getting free was moving to this body. But then this body was also enslaved by similar parties. Um, so when I really got free is when I came of age on this timeline in this body, when I was about 16. I was able to get away from my family at that time, um, and start to separate myself from the satanic cults. Um, Also, the Air Force people, just this was a lot of this was under the supervision of Air Force intelligence, the whole Montauk project. Um, Also, corporate parties and the CIA, a lot of different factions involved. But yeah, as far as my direct supervisors were concerned, they were primarily Air Force officers. So just want to say that. The Air Force people formally discharged me when I was about 16. And they had a ceremony and everything, as if I was actually in the legitimate Air Force. I was, but God knows where that paperwork is. I would love to find it. But yeah, I had a discharge ceremony at the McClellan Air Force Base in Sacramento. And that air base in 2003 was turned over to I think the city of Sacramento, and it was made into like a municipal air base. So it's no longer an Air Force base.
Right.
Um, but the timing of that has a lot to do with the larger rhythms of the Montauk project. So 2003 was a really pivotal year. I got free during that time. Essentially, there was a whole new pattern of manifestation being created, and the project was being moved. So it was on Long Island, and it was also at this base in Sacramento. And it feels good to name that because it hasn't really been talked about. But that was a essential branch of the Montauk project that I had a lot of experience with.
Interesting.
Anyway, they had a formal discharge ceremony there when I was about 16. After I repeatedly refused to work with them any further. Basically, they wanted me to become a programmer, to become a handler, to perpetuate abuse on others. And there were a lot of inducements offered towards that end. There came a point where they couldn't use me against my will anymore. It just wasn't working. Like I was fighting too much. And also I was too broken on the inside. But they knew that I wouldn't consent to work with them any further. And they couldn't just outright kill me because of some very complicated contracts. And here's I don't fully understand this, but here's where the kind of good and evil parties are very real in my experience. Because there are certain agreements between the good guys, we can say, which I usually think of as the Galactic Federation, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, the positive ETs, and the Draconian Empire, the Orion group. So a lot of these, they're from the Draco star, they're from the Orion constellation. As in my mind and in my experience, these are kind of the two big teams of good and evil, we can call them. And they have very intricate agreements between them about what can happen as people go through these torture experiences. And through whatever mechanisms, I don't really understand them, but the important part for me was that they couldn't kill me. If I was going to continue to work with the Montauk project perpetrators, it would have to be by my choice, and I wasn't going to do that. So they couldn't kill me, they couldn't keep me, so they let me loose. That's the short version.
Well, you anticipated my next question. Why didn't they just kill you? I mean, they killed a president, President
Yeah,
Kennedy, right?
yeah,
Um, but as I've learned in my spiritual journey, everything's all about contracts. So when you say there's some type of agreement somewhere existing where they can't do that, maybe there's still some function that you have in the future.
yeah,
I really get that. Um,
yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
about contracts.
I mean, a lot of people who are high vibration, who are star seeds, go through this process, not always in this intensive fashion with so much torture, but on the astral planes, there's an intense struggle for each and every awake person, especially for every person, period, but especially for everybody who's awake. The positive and the negative forces are working overtime through us, to decide what happens with Earth. So I was fought over tooth and nail. I had these horrible torture experiences, and then I also had incredible assistance from the positive forces the whole time. So it was this back and forth, and of course, all I've really wanted to do is just be my own person, just be a human person. But this tremendous battle has been fought through me, and these agreements have been reached about my fate that I'm not really even privy to, at least consciously. I'm sure my higher self, is part of it. But yeah.
Yeah, you always knowing about contracts, you always hear, well, a rape victim, let's say, did they agree to be raped? And then, of course, the rape victim doesn't want to hear that because they're like in their conscious body, they're like, no way did I ever agree to do that.
Mm.
And us in our material realm would have to agree. Now, why would someone agree to have that happen? Yet there are other aspects to ourselves that we aren't really aware of. Why do you suppose that is? How come is that by design that we're not aware of more of our true selves and spiritual power?
It's essentially by design. So prior to the fall of Atlantis, um, people had much more awareness of these contracts. And so there was a lot more alignment between what we directly experience as free will and what actually is free will. Those things did not seem so separate. The sense of separation and the almost total amnesia that most people have, that was not the norm until Atlantis went underwater. There was a much higher level of everybody being tuned into that before. So we're in a very, distinct historical period in the bigger picture, where we're very disconnected from our higher selves, but that's not necessarily the norm for human beings. Yeah, this is an unusual situation.
So you mentioned Jose Arguelles in the last segment. In
Hmm.
one of his books, The Mayan Factor, Path Beyond Technology, he relays some Mayan information that human beings are really millions of years old,
Hmm.
and that we've gone through ups and downs in terms of being awake, more awake, less awake. In our current incarnation, we're really asleep,
Yeah,
and the fact that an indigenous culture like the Mayans or an ancient culture, what modern society would look at as primitive, at least in many ways, would have that perspective really is was mind blowing to me when I read that book.
yeah.
How old are humans? Do you know?
I agree with him. Millions of years old. Yeah.
Okay. In my conversations with Stuart Swerdlow, he says that humans are really from the Lyran constellation, close to the galactic center.
Hmm.
Is your information as well?
Yeah, that's pretty much true. Um, The Prism of Lyra is probably, have you read that book? That's kind of a classic book
I've
about
heard of
that.
it, but no, I have not read it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a pretty strong agreement among a lot of tuned in people that I know. That's basically where we come from.
Okay,
Yeah.
super interesting. You mentioned the Pleiadians, or as in the Billy Meyer case, if you're on the inner circle, you call them the Pleiarans.
Hmm.
Whatever the name is, the beings that are supposedly from the Seven Sister star constellation.
Hmm.
Um, they're good guys, you say?
For the most part.
Okay,
Well, there are
well
negative
said.
Canadians as well, but yeah, I mean, any group on the Earth or off the Earth, isn't entirely going to be one thing because again, there always is free will. There are always people not part of the mainstream. But yeah, in general, the Pleiadians are very, very positive. Um, and there are direct ancestors. I mean, most of our genetic material is Pleiadian. Um, so of course they're going to have a very strong relationship to us.
Are you familiar with the Billy Meyer case?
I'm not. I've heard a little bit about it, but haven't read the books or
Just
anything.
quick recap. Pleiadians come to Earth. There's 200 scientists that got kicked out of whatever planet in the star systems in the Pleiades, and they begin to teach humankind. It kind of parallels the Book of Enoch.
Hmm.
And one of the things I've always had trouble with was that the leader, as portrayed in the Book of Enoch, and also in the Billy Meyer case, is this figure called Semyaza in the Book of Enoch and Semyase in the Billy Meyer case.
Hmm.
Different pronunciation, a little different spelling, but basically the same name. So, but in the Book of Enoch, Semyaza is the leader of the fallen angels.
Hmm.
And so I've always been fascinated by why that is. And I've interviewed the Hertax about this. I've interviewed Stuart Swerdlow about this, a couple other
Hmm.
people, and
Hmm.
different takes on what that is. But that basically that the Semyaza from the Book of Enoch is different from the Semyase that's here. Some say they're the same person, but I'm fascinated by this whole crossover between aliens and demons or fallen angels. I think
Mm-hmm.
You hit the nail on the head when you said reptilians earlier. Uh,
Mm.
Many people think that reptilians are fallen angels.
Mm.
Um, I don't really know what the case is, but what's your take on the crossover between aliens and demons or fallen angels or dark beings of some kind?
Sure. Well, you said a lot just there. And I'm the Hurtak stuff I have read a little bit of. I saw him speak at one of the expos in New York City. Really nice guy, cool beret.
Super
Um,
cool. I just saw
but
him 2 days ago.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Um, but yeah, it's really like a lot of other things, a matter of perception. Um, people that see these entities as demons and people, sort of astral entities and people that see them as physical reptilians. I have respect for both viewpoints. Um, for things that are beyond our dimension, we kind of have to perceive them in whatever ways are going to work for our mind, just so we can keep our reference points, so we can keep kind of our container of the third dimension. Different people are just naturally going to have different perceptions, different filters. Um, I think we are often talking about the same beings for sure. Not always, but quite often, because everybody sees the astral realm differently. We can be looking at the same astral being, you and I, and describing it in slightly different ways. Um, so yeah, so I think that's definitely at play. Um, all that said, the angelic realm, um, in my experience of it, um, it's not something which is corruptible. It's very different from like fallen angel makes you think, okay, there's a pure being who encountered corruption and came to our dimension or something. Um, as I experience the angelic realm, these are not these are beings that they're beyond duality. They're beyond purity and corruption. They live in a much more eternal space. And yeah, and so when people talk about fallen angels, they're usually talking about other types of beings from other levels, as I experience it. Yeah, because the angelic vibration is, it can never be misused. That's part of what defines it for me. So I just want to say that.
Very interesting. So maybe the whole idea of a fallen angel is just programming.
I think part of it is, yeah.
Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, super fascinating topic. So so here we are. Some would refer to Earth as a prison planet.
Hmm.
Some refer to it as a school where we're learning on multiple levels.
Hmm.
Um, is it both?
Yeah, it's definitely both. I mean, the soul's desiring to incarnate and experience this disconnected Earth life to be within the quarantine, because we are in a galactic quarantine. I mean, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, to be this disconnected from life in the galaxy, to be this unaware of other life forms, even ones very much like our own, that's not natural. We have special blinders on right now. Um, yeah, we're in a very unique situation. Um, it's almost, yeah, it's, yeah, there are different ways to describe it. Prison is fine, school is fine, or maybe just a massive Truman Show type of experience. Um, but we are a closely watched people, especially at this time, on many levels of reality. Many beings are tuning in to us and just to see what the human spirit does in conditions of such restriction. Everybody who's incarnated at this time is some sort of advanced soul, pretty much. I mean, there are so many souls wanting to come and have this experience because it's so unique in the universe, that basically there are millions, billions, really incomprehensibly many souls desiring to come here and experience this because it's so unique. Um, so that's worth something. Yeah, this is a really special place.
Okay, so I'm a little old for South Park now, but I used to watch South Park quite a bit. And there's an episode where Earth was a TV show.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I actually just watched that episode recently. Yeah.
And then the kids go and appeal to the producers of the show, these aliens with different body parts than us, and the whole metaphor is that it's like Hollywood where they're all doing coke and having sex with each other.
Yeah.
That was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it
But
was
at
pretty
the same
good.
time, I could see why how that could actually be. That's a metaphor that works as well as any, I think.
Yeah.
So I also study some stuff at Mount Shasta, where you are now.
Hmm.
Um, I am friends with a lady by the name of Diane Robbins,
Hmm.
who is the supposedly the ambassador to Telos, which is again supposedly the city beneath Mount Shasta, full of ascended masters,
Yeah.
survivors of the fall of the Lemurian continent in the Pacific Ocean.
Hmm.
He says that the original experiment, and Earth is an experiment, that it was to see that if once a physical body disconnected from the spirit, could the physical body learn how to not only inhabit and thrive in the physical, but still stay connected to the spiritual and be able to go back and forth at will?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Um, yeah. So I'm also a Lemurian soul. I lived in Lemuria for a long time. If we start bringing in the past life stuff, um, I'm very karmically connected to everything that we're touching on today. Um, I lived in Lemuria for a long time. I lived in Atlantis for a long time, my soul in different bodies. I lived on Maldek for a long time. And even before Earth, I lived in a lot of places where humanity was, because my soul has taken a special interest in the human experience. Um, so I can speak on that basis, on many different levels. Um, yeah. But I kind of forgot the specific question there.
Well, just you were just commenting on what Diane Robbins thinks, the ambassador to
Oh,
Telos
yeah,
thinks of
yeah.
the original experiment.
Yeah, yeah, right on. Um, well, I don't, Earth is not the original place. The human experience has been going for quite a while, on planets before Earth, beyond Earth. Um, even as far as Earth is concerned, this is not the first version of Earth. We're on version number 6. So this is the sixth version of planet Earth. And we've had many, many iterations of the human experience. The Prism of Lyra book that I mentioned again, does a pretty good job describing one of the last ventures, in the Orion system, and how people sort of came over here. And Mount Shasta has a very deep connection to all of that, because the Lemurian mothership basically connected to Earth here. And so our earliest ancestors, even, well, we've been touching on mythology a little bit. If you want to go to Adam and Eve land, a lot of that has to do with, the Lemurian peopling of planet Earth, and a lot of that originated in this area. Um, so, for what it's worth.
Very interesting. Uh, yeah, I was I've been told that I wasn't born in California for no reason,
Hmm.
and that my soul is reincarnating in a place where I've had past lives.
Yeah,
It sounds like you might have a similar thing going on.
this is
Um,
true.
okay, so we got about 10, 12 minutes left. So whatever it is, a school, an experiment, prison planet, what's the end result for humanity?
Oh, well, ideally transcending all of our limitations and being absolutely free beings, and, creating a genuinely free society, rejoining our galactic brothers and sisters openly, um, through our own efforts, through our own self-mastery, rejoining our galactic family. I mean, that's what I'm here for. That's what I want.
Okay, so how much longer do we have to endure the suffering, the struggling, the yeah? Any idea?
It gets really hard to say, because, um, we're living in false time at the moment. Um, and this can be kind of discouraging, but, um, from certain perspectives, there's not a time limit on the experience that we're having. It kind of takes as long as it takes. Um, and it's really up to us to determine when and where and how things happen, we have a lot more power than we realize. We're all co-creating this experience. This entire experience we are co-creating together right now in real time. So it's not just something that's done to us, or, you know, a place where we wound up when we were incarnating and now we're kind of stuck there. I mean, there's some truth to that, but at the same time, everything is alive. Even within the prison, all reality is malleable. And so we determine the timing. We're the ones who are our own saviors. We are the ones we've been waiting for, you know, as the book title goes. Um, and yeah, so really predictions are, I try not to make them because they're usually wrong. And things are changing so fast. Our version of time is mostly artificial at this point. We're very disconnected from galactic time. So we can stay in this fantasy as long as we want to, unfortunately, or we can really accelerate our growth and kind of bring ourselves out of it.
So it's our choice.
That's what I believe.
That, you know, it sounds so simple when you say it that way. Well, of course, why would, just like the rape victim, no way would I ever go get raped, right? But yet it seems to be more complicated than that. Um, okay, so what's next for you? Is there another documentary planned? Do you have a book maybe that you're thinking of?
Yeah, books are probably what I'm most called to. I've been hugely procrastinating about that.
Oh, I know
But
that feeling. Yeah.
yeah, but I love writing. I work as a poet, you know, I work as a poet for hire at different events. So I'm always writing poetry. And in a sense, I'm always talking about these things, but in a more abstract way, in a more creative way. I'm very called to take the time, you know, put in the effort, show the patience to just deal with these things in a more direct fashion, like we're doing now, like, you know, as happens in an interview when people are talking to each other. You know, it's a very different way of communicating. I like poetry because I can sort of freely float between the dimensions and everything doesn't have to have a direct meaning, you know. Um, but yeah, but I am also going to do some more nuts and bolts writing. So I'm definitely into that. Um, and obviously, I mean, this should be clear abundantly by now, is that my life is about healing. You know, I'm here for healing work. I'm here to be healed. I'm here to serve others with their healing. You know, this is a big life dharma thing. Um, and yeah, probably also guiding people on various levels in meditation. Also working as a guide physically on Mount Shasta. Um, these are some things that I'm into. So yeah, probably I'll be doing these things. Healing, writing, making music. It's very important to me. Um, yeah, I mean, as serious as these topics have been, I'm also here to play. You know, I'm here to have fun. So, uh, those are some basic drives. Yeah.
You know, becoming more childlike seems to be a common factor in keeping yourself youthful, in mental and emotional health. And so playtime is definitely, you know, it's underrated in adult, quote unquote, adult society,
Hmm.
but super important for the healing.
I think
Uh,
so.
yeah. Okay. So where can people see you? Are you going to be at any conferences coming up? Are you
Yeah, I'm going to be at the Full Disclosure Now conference, which is happening in the middle of July in Florida, St. Pete, Florida. Um,
okay?
that's a whole, there's a little bit of drama in the disclosure community. James Rink from Super Soldier Talk, who I really love and who was hosting us at Montauk during the filming of that documentary. He had a conference planned. I don't exactly understand what happened, but some of the community members kind of took it over, and now it's different people running it, but it's a lot of the same guests and some new guests. Anyway, so apparently James is having his conference like right before, I think July 14th to 18th, and then there's this one which is the 18th to, or yeah, I don't know the exact dates, but it's Full Disclosure Now is the name of it. That's going to be my next like big public, you know, live event.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you? Are you open to talking to people that maybe have had similar experiences than you, but are not as far down the healing path as you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do healing sessions, I do coaching sessions. I work with other survivors. I can help people find their sanity in similar ways to what I've done. Yeah, my website is ontarianjourneys.com. And we haven't really touched on this, but Ontarians are some of the higher dimensional beings that I'm very aligned with from the Scorpio constellation. So you could share that. People can reach me that way. I also do events, performing poetry. So that's poetryuponrequest.com also. Um, yeah, and I'm thinking about working events and things. I was doing a lot of that on the East Coast. I'm pretty new to the West Coast, so I'm still kind of finding my way there. But yeah, I worked. I'm working. Oh, people can also find me at Soul Connections in Mount Shasta. It's a crystal shop with a little yoga studio above the shop. I lead a meditation there every Thursday, 5:30 to 7 Pacific, or 8:30 to 10 Eastern time. Um, or wherever you are in between. People can join that on Zoom. I have an email list, and you can sign up on my website for that. Or if you're in Mount Shasta, just come to Soul Connections any Thursday, 5:30 to 7.
Okay, wonderful. I'm very familiar with that store. It's like I knew that store when it was only half the size it is, and now it's
Hmm.
like taking up that whole almost that whole block.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's like an emporium. It's like a crystal superstore.
A
Um,
New Age Emporium is the official title.
is that what it is? Okay,
Yeah.
I was tuned into that apparently. Okay,
Yeah.
so we got about 5 minutes left. Give us a good story about it. Your actual like physical hiking guide on the mountain of Shasta. What?
I'm just starting to do this. So I've
Okay,
been a tour guide as a day job for a little while. Most recently in Seattle, I was driving big tour buses through the city of Seattle and talking about it, and I was having a lot of fun with it. Um, right now, I'm familiarizing myself with the different areas of the Shasta Trinity National Wilderness area. Um, and I'm getting to know some of the guides here. I went on a tour the other day with Andrew from Mount
sure.
Shasta Spiritual Retreat. Yeah.
I've heard of you. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm meeting people. I'm getting to know the area. I'm gonna apply for my Forest Service permit to be doing my own tours probably in the fall.
Okay.
So yeah, right now I'm kind of exploring and learning.
Okay.
But yeah, that'll probably be up and running sometime later this year or next year.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not a tour guide, but I'm inquisitive, and I've been going to Mount Shasta for 15 years now, off and on, since I interviewed Diane Robbins in 2009. Did a series of
Hmm.
interviews. Um, there are so many spots on the mountain. People say, "Oh, there's a doorway here to go inside of Telos," or
Hmm.
I was at this campground and I saw Lemurian,
Hmm.
or a UFO landed, or I saw reptilian, Bigfoot stuff,
Yeah.
ascended masters floating around.
Yeah.
It's incredible the stuff that you can get there. And if modern man could figure out how to have an ocean cruise and provide all those things, it would be the most popular cruise around.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's
so
true.
you've wound up in a hot spot of all that kind of phenomena. Is that a coincidence, or is it?
No, no, of course not. As I shared, I'm an old Lemurian soul. I'm very drawn to this place. I always have been. I kind of knew that in the back of my mind, like when I really started my period of kind of bigger service in my life, I would wind up here. So now that's happened. But yeah, I've been coming here in meditation for a long time, traveling here astrally for years and years. I've been inside the mountain many times, and sat on different Lemurian councils. I'm definitely very, very involved with the spirit of this place.
Okay. I've been to UFO expos for 20 years, and eventually, if you go to enough of them, you're going to run into somebody who's going to say, I've seen you on a ship, or
Hmm.
whatever. I've heard a variety of things. One of the things I've heard is I have family in Lemuria.
Mm.
Do you have family? I mean, in Telos, excuse me. Do you have family in Telos by chance?
Um,
You ever been told that?
I don't know if I've been told it by someone else, but I have definitely experienced it. Um, I'm actually tuning into that. So it's kind of a big subject because I was used as a breeder by the Draco, by the Satanists. Um, and so I actually have a lot of children around. Um, and unfortunately, I'm not really able to be in their lives. A lot of them are still enslaved. But I have this awareness always that my direct blood relatives are in a lot of different places, could be doing a lot of different things. It's been a really painful area to tune into. Um, but this would be good. So that's sort of why I haven't been tuning into that as much. But I'm sure I have astral family there, which is a little easier, less painful to talk about. On that level, definitely, I have family. And it's possible that some of my blood family is involved as well.
Okay. So are you going to get to go there physically to Telos, or is that only available through the astral?
I'm not sure yet. It's definitely available astrally because I've had that experience. Physically, time will tell.
What's preventing that from happening?
Oh, well, I need to get more grounded here, first of all. I've only been here less than half a year. So I'm still getting to know the community, the lay of the land. Um, it's important to be really grounded, especially if you're going to have a far out experience like that. You want to have something to come back to. So at this moment, I'm focusing on grounding here. Um, I still go there astrally, but as far as the physical experience is concerned, I think it probably has to wait until some things align and I'm more rooted where I am.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that I would love to do at some point would be to go there physically. Maybe I'll see you there one day. Uh,
Yeah.
Alandra Markman, thank you so much for your time. The
Oh,
documentary is called The Lost Souls of Montauk. I will post your websites and the documentary link at the bottom. Thank
ah,
you so much for your time. I will
thanks,
stay in
Brett.
touch, my friend. Have a great
Yeah.
night.
Next episode, live from Telos.
Yes. I love